our guest who is joining us via Zoom is Professor Uchenna Ekwo, who is an educationist, African diaspora scholar. Good evening, Prof.
Good evening, and it's afternoon over here.
Good evening. Welcome. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Okay, Prof, let's dive right into the conversation for tonight. The media and Nigeria politics is what we are conversing on tonight. And just to get a background view of it, how do you perceive the media when it comes to the Nigerian politics? What kind of information do they disseminate to the public? Do they do it the right way, or there's sort of sentiment attached to it?
Yeah, obviously, the Nigerian media is a very virile and robust institution of itself. And like you find in the literature, what we call media political complex, it's all over the world, and Nigeria's own is also unique in its own. Yeah, Nigeria, like at the opening of this segment, the other anchor actually explained a few things about Nigerian media's role in galvanizing Nigerians to attain independence and even to sustain that independence, and also even that fought the military regime to restore the current democracy Nigeria has right now. So Nigeria's media is a very strong one, especially when you compare it with other African countries. But there are so many challenges that persist, obviously. I was in Nigeria in 2023 to conduct after the election, a peace journalism training program we did in Abuja and Enugu. It also opened my eyes to a few, we had this for senior editors and publishers. So it's kind of opened my eyes a lot more about contemporary issues about Nigerian media. And also when I did a fellowship, on, that was last summer. So I discovered a whole lot of things that I thought may have changed. Nigerian media still has this problem of credibility and also the challenges of freedom. I practiced in Nigeria actually. That's how much I'm able to even tell you stories about Nigerian media. I used to think that the media was not free during the military regime. So I thought now that we have a civilian government that there will be greater freedom. But the truth is that it's not like that. It's even worse. So we can go into discussing a whole range of issues related to media freedom and how I have come to a conclusion that we don't have enough freedom in Nigerian media today. But one other thing also that I also want to talk about, which I hope practitioners can pay attention to, the whole concept of homogenization of the media landscape. What do I mean by that? The homogenization of media content, media landscape, refers to the increasing trend of media content becoming similar across different countries and cultures, often driven by the dominance of Western media and cultural products. The consequence of this is that it leads to a decline in cultural diversity as local cultures are influenced or replaced by a global, often westernized culture. This is something that is very important to my research area about local news and advancement of democracy. So we can talk more about this, about the consequences of media homogenization and the importance of local journalism as well. There's an organization we're also working with in Nigeria right now. It's called Media Education Development Initiative Africa. That's media. To really focus on some of these issues. Even the organization, we're working with the organization on a whole lot of issues in terms of even public opinion research, which we think the Nigerian media should be doing on a regular basis, providing some intellectual input to that. So we are partnering with Signature Television to, accomplish that. That will be a contribution to the media's job, really, as a barometer to measure the political temperature of Nigeria from time to time, so that leaders, can trust the opinion of, because the way the fragmentation of media system in Nigeria, you don't even know what is true and what is not true in a whole lot of issues, made worse by all the social media and all that. So we can discuss that more intently. So, but I've highlighted some key areas that I think I want the media to really work hard on. The another issue is, which is also very vital, is the economic viability of the media itself. Because honestly, like in your station, for example, you can't work when you don't have the resources to do your job. Resources include money, equipment, and all that. Most media organizations are handicapped. To that extent, we are also exploring some measures to see how we can set up a media trust fund to support some media organizations, especially locally focused organizations like yours. I see you guys say we are local. That, attracts me actually, because the laboratory of democracy is in rural communities. So, and unfortunately, for too long, people in the villages and rural areas have been ignored. We've had this mantra for so long, but today technology has made it possible that we can really see how we can bring their voices, onto the platform. Your president, a former president of Nigeria, died, so I will be interested in learning what people in remote areas are talking about. Do they even know who he is? Do they even know his policies? How did his policies affect their lives? Rather than just talking to all these politicians, the same faces, same voices we are talking about. So we're interested in media pluralism to create a situation where people are able to, add more voice into the conversation. We're interested in preventing erosion of local cultures. All right. So all these influences about even Hollywood and all that, and spread of Western fashion and stuff. So there are local things that we do, we should be proud of, and we should be able to, project them, before the rest of the world, right? And concentration of media ownership. There are a couple of issues we need to talk about, but again, I'm sure we're limited by time. So I'll pause for now and maybe hear from you, maybe some other issues you want us to talk about.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Uchenna. The question that I would like to ask is that do you think media outfits are really doing enough in terms of exposing corruption in politics, or they are plain safe to be in business?
Yeah, there are two ways. Yeah, obviously you have to play safe, but I also know that Nigeria has been, they are doing well. I mean, the Nigerian media, because but let's face it, sometimes even when they report this corruption, you see, reporting it is one thing, facing the consequences is another. I'm aware that even your organization have done had some breakthroughs in reporting corrupt practice, because I think sometime about 2 years ago, your chief executive joined us at a conference with the United Nations Office of Drug and Crime. I remember hearing him talk about how he did some very, earth-moving investigative journalism. But what did he, yeah, he could publish something like that, but the actors will not do anything, right? So, like, the media does not control the courts. The media does not control the government. So you could report that, but if the actors refuse to obey the laws or to enforce laws, or if the judiciary, the judiciary is unable to do anything, there's just nothing the media could do. Actually, I had, sometime I was in Nigeria in 2021, I met one of my friends who is a senator, and we started having a conversation about the media, Nigerian media and all that. He told me I should just stop, that Nigerian problem is not the media. In fact, he specifically pointed out that the judiciary is the problem. And he went on to tell me very terrible stories about what's going on within the judiciary. So again, Nigeria's media over time fought corruption, but the question he asked is, isn't that when there's an exposure about corrupt practices, the legal framework is supposed to pick it up from there, prosecute X, Y, and Z. But when that is not done, how would you blame the media for such malfeasance? Obviously not. So it kind of discourages investigative journalism. And there are other ways also government make it impossible for the media to really accomplish some investigations. If you don't have maybe enough resources to survive, you may not have that capacity to really engage in thorough investigative journalism. Last summer, when I came to Nigeria, I interviewed a couple of journalists, and there was one incident where I was told that some government officials who give reporters press releases and insist that they have to publish it the way it is written. One of the reporters told me how she was able to, like look for a peg in that story and wrote it differently. And they got mad with her. And I couldn't believe such things can happen. And the next thing that will happen is that they will blacklist you. They won't put you on their boss or whatever, So those are subtle ways the media face challenges. And when you think about it, that most media organizations in Nigeria are not strong enough, to withstand such harassments and such intimidation. Don't get me wrong, even here in the United States, things like that are also happening. But the difference is, to an extent, the legal system still operates. I'll give you an example. There was a CNN reporter that was expelled from White House, and he went to court, and court insisted that he has to be returned to the White House, and he was reinstated. I'm not sure whether that's what I think will happen in Nigeria, So, but again, there are challenges all over the place. Reporting corruption is one thing. Using the law enforcement authorities to make sure that there's adequate punishment for such infractions should also be another thing. So there is only so much the media can do. I understand. I keep emphasizing this over-assumption that the media, has this deus ex machina thing that, they can just solve every problem. No, but I get the point, with ordinary folks. They think that because the media hobnobs with the government, like media political complex, so they are also part of the system, But the average reporter understands that he is not part of the system, But the way the media is framed in most societies today is that, you're one of them. The corporate media, you're one of them. Forgetting that the media is supposed to be there as the last line of defense for ordinary folks, So that the much I can talk about corruption and the impact or the extent to which reporters can cover the stories. But another point I also want to look at, because sometimes you can look at in the mirror as well. There's also instances where reporters are not straightforward in terms of reporting stories. In Abuja, I had one of the reporters told me a story about some of them who are even working in National Assembly, who don't even have a functional media organization that exists. Some of the organizations have either folded up or whatever, but they are there to be extorting money here and there from politicians. In fact, sometimes they make up a story and tell a senator, for example, we have this information about you, this and that. You have to bring money so that we don't publish that. I've heard such stories, but much as I don't know any person who does, but that's the story they told me. In my view, that's also some element of corruption. So if the media practitioners in one way or the other exhibit any corrupt practice, how will they be able to now confront the system to challenge political leaders who are corrupt? But again, I don't actually want to look at the media as a monolithic thing. So it's not as if every profession has some bad eggs. So the media is not different, but there are good reporters who are committed to the public good. I've interviewed a lot of reporters in the past who are really genuinely committed with the profession to protect the public good and protect citizens.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a good thing that you mention the challenges that the media is facing in Nigeria. Now, the question is, are there reforms or policies that you would suggest for the Nigerian media to have, for it to be independent and, of course, do better regarding politicians?
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, like I started initially, I discussed with a senator. He's no longer a senator right now, but we are trying to float some kind of legislation that would think it's been done in Australia and it's also ongoing here so far now. Because when we talk about homogenization of media content, if you look at Facebook, YouTube, and all these major entities, they feed on all of us. You guys rely on YouTube, Facebook. Sometimes you pick some stories from there, or you write any story as a reporter and it's published in Facebook. Someone else will read that. To be honest with you, I learned about Buhari's death on Twitter. I just woke up and saw Peter B regretting the demise. I said, well, that's how I got to know about it, right? Now, all these tech companies are making so much money because when you write something, publish it on this, those are people who make the money, leaving the reporters empty. So in Australia, what they did was to, campaign for a legislation, and they successfully got that. And that legislation requires all these big tech companies to give a portion of the money they make in that country for the support of the media. So far, as at last year, they raised about $200 million from that. We can do something like that in Nigeria, but it needs the active support of the legislators in Nigeria and even Aso Rock for that matter. Secondly, there could be a way government should give some tax incentives to media organizations, especially those ones that report about rural activities. Local, like I said, I'm so much into local journalism. So there has to be a way government could provide some incentives to them. Even at the state level, like we launched a campaign, even at state level, there should be a way government should put, especially at local governments. When I remember sometime last year, they celebrated the fact that local governments now have autonomy. Why is it that local governments cannot float their own radio stations, newspapers, and all that? In other words, they have hospitals, they have fire service and all that. We are arguing that the media should be treated as a public good, just like you have health centers and all that, because information is vital for any democratic society to survive. So we want to see access to diverse perspectives. In other words, there has to be some measure of media pluralism, whereby alternative viewpoints are heard, not just the same kind of people all the time. You see, each time, if I see like what's the best newspaper in Nigeria, as in I see Guardian newspaper here on the streets of New York, quite frankly, if I see anything about I'm not going to be interested, but I'll be interested in if I see anything about my village, and then that's the thing that I want to read. Proximity is key, all right? So I want to emphasize that most reporters should cover diversity. Everyone should not just be concentrating on Abuja, because each time you are discussing Abuja, it's all over the place. It's all over the newspapers. So, and sometimes they're copying themselves. So why should I? And this is part of the reason why most of the organizations are failing. They should try something else. They should try something else. Albert Einstein talks about, you can't solve a problem by employing the same mindset that created them. So this idea of, center all the time will not cut it. The Daily Star I used to know in Enugu should have been a very successful newspaper if they had focused alone within the Southeast. Forget about covering, leave Abuja and all that to the big newspapers and stuff. Concentrate in your immediate environment. And government should also provide some measure of freedom, because this idea of some governments at the state level, they have to go to Lagos to import all the national dailies to come and cover their events, say in Enugu, for example. Whereas there are correspondents all over there in Obiagu. They ignore them, and they go and pick people from Lagos. That's not sustainable. I've argued against this. So there has to be a way we encourage the media system. And the funny thing about all these politicians, honestly, is that they know they can't survive without the media. That is true. Everything they go there, yet you can't even fund them. Provide some measure. I understand that, yes, some people say, why should government fund the media? Because it will give them ample opportunity to control the narratives and all that. Okay, when they are not controlling them, did anything change? They still find subtle ways of controlling the media. So my thing is, reporters should have some measure of comfort. Comfort in the sense that they should have the tools of trade. And because government is has a very strong influence in Nigeria, the private sector is not that strong enough to, shoulder the media this thing entirely, except if you're in the axis of Lagos or maybe Abuja. Other states don't have that capacity. So I will encourage the government, especially local governments, to emphasize, to invest in local journalism. It is key, and it doesn't cost much. So let them start from somewhere. Those are some ideas I may talk about, And also, finally, let me just mention this, I'm interested in homogenization of global media landscape. It's a complex issue, obviously. Yeah, it has positive and negative consequences, all right? So while maybe it can facilitate cultural exchange and awareness, I understand that it also poses threat to cultural diversity and local identities. No one wants to lose his or her own identity. So, but we need to understand the dynamics of media globalization, as crucial for navigating its impact on our societies and cultures. You see, there has to be there's a theory in media study called cultural norms theory. Sometimes let me just use America, for example. There are people in Nigeria, as me, have not come to America, but they seem to know everything about America. How did that happen? Through the media. All right. I watched Trump when he received some African leaders the other day, and he was asking the president of Sierra Leone, who taught him English, because he was speaking good English. So because he doesn't know that, he doesn't have that information that Sierra Leone was a British colony. And some of us also don't have those kind of questions a lot. Most of them are ignorant. They don't. So because of the fact that they don't know what's going on over there, so our media should be helping to propagate what we stand for and who we are, because nobody can tell your story better than yourself. So that's a very critical point I think reporters should also know. And also, one thing I've also spoken to most African journalists when I travel around, that they should also understand that they play a role in the negative portrayal of our country and our continent in Western media. Why do I say that? Most media organizations don't have enough resources to have correspondents around the world like they used to have. So what do? They could rely on signature television. Maybe they see one negative story you are showing on television, and they just want to, because all they want to show here is about negative issues about Nigeria or other African continent. So when the reporter is packaging that story, he wouldn't know that, it's going to be a source of information for the Western news organization. Some of them in newspapers will report adversely, about the government, about the country and all that. So they want to pick that up, I will never forget an experience when I came in to watch news and I saw Rachel Maddow talking about, what's it called? A snake swallowing money in Nigeria. Those are the kind of stories they like to, highlight. I'm not saying that you should not report what has happened, but I'm just emphasizing that there are lots of good things that are happening here in Nigeria or African countries that the media should report, not just only the negative things as well. So I think I will pause for here. Thank you so
And
much.
Professor Uchenna, let's look at social media as another mainstream of information. Can social media in the Nigeria politics be also seen as a popularized platform to disseminate information, or has it actually been polarized for misinformation to the electorate?
Obviously, when we look at, again, let me also talk about this homogenization media. So potential for social impact and influence, actually. The dominant media narratives can shape public opinion and influence political discourse, potentially marginalizing minority voice. That's true. So social media is something I think we have to be strategic in how we harness its potentials because a lot of people have handheld phones where they have WhatsApp, they can share information on that, but it comes with a cost. Most times, the information that are shared are not credible, and not many people understand or know how to verify information. So they click and they share. They said so. Sometimes when I see it, I want to critically evaluate that information. As a matter of fact, the organization I told you that you are partnering with your station, we're also going to provide some training on how people can verify information. Something causes some misinformation and disinformation, how to cross-check information. So today, we live in an environment where we have information abundance, yet those abundance can also be a challenge. How it's a challenge is that when you don't have quality processed information, obviously you can also cause crisis within the polity. Therefore, credible news organizations like yours will stand a better position to even look at some of these social media hoax and call it for what it is. Let me give you an example. When this Trump administration came on board, someone sent information. It went wild, actually, about one woman from Ivory Coast who is a U.S. citizen who came back and they said they took his U.S. citizenship passport and they told him to go back, that he traveled without a visa. It went so well, people started panicking. People will call me, so I had to verify this. And meanwhile, there's no name in it. There are a lot of things, there are different flags you can see in a story to know that this is not credible. So, but how many people think about that? They just see something, like the program, the training we ran in Nigeria in 2023, we also discovered that even some of these killings you find on social media, some of them were things that happened in the past. People will be sharing it to cause trouble in the north to say, oh, this is Boko Haram and all that. So we have to be careful. And I think credible news organizations should also help to, get this thing put in place. And this is why I emphasize local journalism. If every community, like 774 local governments in Nigeria, should have some basic local news organizations, they will help to, bring down the level of mistrust and level of spread of misinformation. Because before the thing goes, out to the mainstream media, some people may be able to correct that, and people gravitate to telling fake stories when they don't have alternatives of credible information. So that's what we find in the literature. So when people don't have enough information, they gravitate to social media where there's spread of misinformation. And as a matter of fact, even in the research in this sector, people click stories that are fake than authentic stories because some of them can be very tempting and palatable. All right. So those are the challenges the current media ecosystem, faces. And every one of us, every citizen, because probably everybody is a reporter now, but very few are editors. Everybody is a publisher, but few are editors. I want to emphasize that because the fact that you can just put something or publish something in Facebook or Twitter does not make you an editor because you don't know the nuances, you don't know the processes of editing stories. So even cross-checking or verifying facts, obviously, a good reporter will not just publish anything. You want to make sure that this is authentic because your name is there and your organization is there. You don't want to put your name and your organization to ridicule. But ordinary citizens, they don't care. Even some credible organizations will pick stories from the social media and they run it like that without cross-checking. That's wrong. So I will encourage practitioners, including you people there, to consider, looking at some of these trends and make sure that you are on the guard because information is the lifeblood of democracy. And we also say that journalists are midwives of democracy. So Nigerian political space will make more sense when there is vertical and horizontal flow of information propelled by credible news organizations.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Uchenna Ekwo, educationist, African diaspora scholar. Thank you. In case you just joined us, we were looking at the media and Nigeria politics.
Save Nature TV, news in your pocket.